So would you prefer if you guys see my face, or do you want to see the slides? Because I can do either or. I don't know. If you want to see my face, we'll go to skill number 2, which is budgeting. Go ahead, Nelly. Yes.
Sorry. We have a race.
Yes, we have. Okay, the slides. So they're saying the slides. So let's go to the slides. No problem.
I think,
Yep.
I'm sorry. I think somebody wants to share their vision because after you ask.
Yes, please. Can you? Yes. Who wants to share their vision? Please speak up.
Hi, my name is Seda Marianne. So I'm a public health specialist, and when you said visualizing stuff, I'm really good at visualizing my future, but it's kind of I don't know how to go from visualizing to planning. So you'll help me in that issue. So. What I imagine to myself, how I will retire, everything that you mentioned, like traveling, being independent, and not working for one's own enjoyment, not for a living. And last but not least, being able to afford all. Some recreational activities that would ensure have for me and my family members. So that's basically that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for sharing your opinions with us, your visualization. It all starts with visualization, as well as writing down your goals. And I will definitely teach you how to go from having goals to getting them into action. We will talk about that, which brings up to our next point, which is skill number 2, which is budgeting. Now, can anyone tell me what does budgeting mean to them? Even though it says it on my screen, the process of tracking income, subtracting expenses, and deciding how to divert the difference to your goals each month. But in your own words, can somebody tell me, what does budgeting mean to you? Anyone can raise their hands or can just speak up. Unmute yourselves and speak up, please. What does budgeting mean to you?
May I?
Yes, please. Just please say your name, please. And everybody gets about 45 seconds when they're talking. Say your name and tell us what your opinion is and what does budgeting mean to you, please. Go ahead.
I'm Christina. The local representative of Tribe Armenia office, Tribe Armenia Foundation, Armenia office. Budgeting is one of my weaknesses because I usually, I'm very much, I like spending money, and very often I face that problem, but of course only in my personal matters. When it comes to the business, I am very, very careful and extra, I would say, over kind of trying in that, because in my personal matters, while buying a present or doing some treatments or treating someone, doing some receptions parties, I'm trying to buy as much as possible, and very often I feel like I run out of my budget. And only recently I forced myself to do budgeting before doing actually anything in personal life. And it worked very well, because otherwise you face incredibly big problems, which in some cases are almost not possible to solve. And that's where people have to go and to get some extra loans and get in financial problems. So budgeting for me is to make sure that your expenses don't oversee your incomes. In other words, you cannot spend more than you have. Unfortunately, many people do these mistakes, and it turns to be a very, very big problem.
That's an excellent point, Christina Can. But the first question is, when it comes to budgeting, what you said is extremely important. You cannot spend more than you make. But the question is, does everyone know what they make? Because in United States, we have this concept of gross income and net income, right? So if I make a gross income of X dollars per month, let's just for just calculation purposes, just as an example, say I'm making $1,000 a month, but in reality, I don't really make $1,000 a month because I have to pay, living in the state of New York, you have to pay federal taxes, you have to pay New York state taxes, you have to pay local taxes. If you work in New York City, you have to pay New York City income tax. So there are many, many types of taxes that we have to pay. So I know this is a concept that I really want the Armenians to get more familiar with. When you're looking at your expenses, when you're looking at your budget, think of net expenses, net income, not gross. So if you're making $1,000, you have to...
Exactly.
Right.
This is very important, even when people go for work interviews and they are being asked about the salary, how much would you like to receive as a salary? Some people get very attracted with very high amounts without even considering that if you take off from this all the taxes, your transportation cost, your lunch expenses, then you end up with the same money as if you were to work near your house. So that's where you have to compare your incomes to keep track of them. Therefore, tracking is very important for this.
So I have a question for everyone. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So I had this problem when I was asked about the salary. My recent job was, they offered me pretty high salary. Then I ended up with exactly the same amount as I was receiving in my previous job. So technically, there was absolutely no reason for me to change my job. The only problem I had was the transportation, which was very far from my house. So now when I'm being asked about giving some figures about money, I'm very, very careful about calculating and then telling yes or no. That was the only thing I...
So that's a very, very good point. So when you're thinking about income and you're thinking about expenses, think about all of the expenses. Again, gross versus net is very, very important. So I'm curious to know if you can just type in the chat box, how many are actually doing budgeting? I'm just curious to know, do you guys have a budget and do you have expense analysis worksheet? So we can share with you, for those of you who are interested, we actually have worksheets that we give out to clients that will allow them, will help them to start thinking about monthly budget, that will start enforcing you to put all of your expenses down on a piece of paper, because visualization is very important, because most of us don't realize how much money we spend. We always think we spend less than we actually do. So, and when you have your expenses on paper, it's easier to take control of it. It's easier to say, you know what? Maybe I don't need this extra expense. Maybe I don't need to, do this extra activity, or I don't need to go to this extra event, or, again, I don't, working with Americans is slightly different than, other people from other countries, but Americans are big spenders and they also love to go on vacations, and oftentimes they don't realize or recognize whether this is within their budget or not. So it's really, I don't want to beat this subject to death. I just want to make sure everybody understands that it's very important to get a grip on your expenses and be able to control your expenses. That first step starts with putting it down on a piece of paper and understanding where your money is coming from and where it's going. So that's the first step. Any questions before I go to the next skill? Are there any questions about what we have discussed so far? If there are questions, let's see. I have in the chat box here. Let's see. So there's people here that said that they are doing it from time to time, but not doing it regularly. Some people say they're doing it not always. Let's see. Perfect. There's some people, Ani says that they're doing it, budgeting. That's excellent. So for those of you, we have a seminar evaluation sheet or a presentation evaluation sheet. If you want the expense analysis worksheet, if you can just check off that box, I will definitely make sure that Nelly sends everything to you.